Well guys, we're back on the SNP, because this time old Fishlips is now being raked over the coals for wasting £62 billion in fiscal transfers with nothing to show for it. This money comes from better off parts of the UK and is spread around anywhere that needs it, like Scotland, since the SNP do a great job of running it into the ground while blaming everything on England. Now, reports are suggesting the £62 billion has been wasted thanks to her push for the SNP's version of Scottish independence, which to anyone else would be vassalage. You know, the SNP's dreams of being the bitch of Brussels and helping them import the third world into Europe. She would open the borders and give them all £11,000 a year in exchange for their vote, as we already know. Of course, nothing will come from this, and the SNP will continue to waste our money. Politicians waste taxpayers' money all the time. It's their second best skill behind talking shit. But thankfully, the Express picked up on this, so I can call out Fishlips for her utter bullshit and wasting all our money. SNP shame. Sturgeon accused of squandering £62 billion of UK cash amid independence obsession. Nicola Sturgeon's SNP government has been criticised for having nothing to show for the £62 billion in transfers from other parts of the UK the Scottish Tories have claimed. Which, to be honest, doesn't really surprise me anyway. Take a look at how much money the SNP spend with nothing to show for it. Oh, except for the drug death capital of Europe, that is something the SNP have managed to achieve. So that could be the one success story. Give it a few years, they will be banding it around like it is a good thing. Since Nicola Sturgeon's party, the SNP, came to power back in 2007, it has reportedly received the staggering figure in fiscal transfers from Westminster. According to research by the Scottish Conservatives, fiscal transfers are payments given to regions across the UK from wealthier parts with a fiscal surplus. It is believed Scotland received £10.76 billion from other parts of the UK to counter the £15.1 billion deficit accrued in 2019 to 2020, because like I said, the SNP run it into the ground and constantly have a massive deficit, which makes me laugh when they scream about independence. How are you actually going to get it with the debt that you're in, plus the fact that you don't have a currency or central bank, and you certainly won't be using the Great British Pound, that is for sure. Imagine screaming and shouting that you want an independent Scotland and then having to use the Great British Pound afterwards, which would be an ultimate slap in the face to the SNP, but they're stupid enough to go for it anyway. Now, the Scottish Conservative finance spokesman Murdo Fraser has lashed out at Miss Sturgeon and the SNP, accusing them of squandering the Britain bonus. He also claimed independence for Scotland would mean the end of fiscal transfers, which obviously it would. Fiscal transfers are for parts of the UK. If Scotland leaves, they won't be getting a penny, and we will be building a fucking wall to make Trump's wall look piss poor, because we all know the SNP will import half the fucking world into its country and let them just bowl over the border into the UK, even with the 11 grand a year she would likely give them. Mr. Fraser said the SNP has nothing to show for all this extra funding from the rest of the UK, and what that should really say is the Scottish people have nothing to show for all this extra funding from the rest of the UK. Because I would bet your bollocks to a barn dance that this money has been siphoned off to friends of the SNP, Nicola Sturgeon, and the rest of these tosspots. It happens in Scotland, it happens in England, let me tell you, it happens everywhere. He continued though, on the SNP's watch, our schools have fallen down international league tables and our economy has struggled to keep up, costing Scotland better jobs and more money for public services. And please don't forget the drug death capital of the world. I'm sure it was heroin, which was the drug that was most common up there. I could be wrong. By the looks of Nicola Sturgeon in this picture here, she could have actually been on the smack herself. The money is there right now to improve our economy, create jobs and deliver world-class public service. Scotland just needs to move on from a government distracted by constant constitutional grievances so we can focus on the real issues that matter. Yeah, but given the fact that you're a Tory, I really wouldn't bank my life on it that you would actually deal with the issues that matter. We've seen what the government in the UK is actually doing now. 80-seat majority, my arse. Anyone would think they're in coalition with the Labour Party or subservient to the media, because it seems they always cave to media outrage. Miss Sturgeon is calling for another independence referendum once the threat of COVID-19 has gone, despite the Scottish people voting to remain part of the UK back in 2014, which, as you all know, was a once-in-a-generation vote, so we'll see you again in about 2034 or 20, 40 times. Mr. Fraser argued the fiscal transfers would be put at risk if the SNP continue their push for independence. He continued, this is money supporting our public services that would be put at risk by the SNP's demands for independence. The funding has now reached a staggering $62 billion over a period that the SNP has been in office since 2007. So in 13 years they've wanked $62 billion down the toilet on God knows what. Maybe we should find out what they've actually spent it on. He continued, without these fiscal transfers we would be looking at either massive cuts to public spending, enormous tax rises, or a brutal combination of both. It would have to be a brutal combination of both. The SNP are not going to be able to do one or the other. And I'll tell you something, as soon as that happens, the people of Scotland will turn against the SNP, Nicola Sturgeon, and the rest of these low-life snivelling shitweasels, that is for sure. Mr. Fraser's comments come after support for independence is on the rise. According to the most recent panel-based poll, 55% of Scots are now in favour. If granted independence, the Scottish government would have the power to borrow money needed to cover the deficit. Yes, but where would they have the power to borrow that from, and against what exactly? This is something that needs to be pointed out. What currency are they using? Because the British government could never let them use the Great British Pound, as I've said. The people in the UK would be incensed, and the Tory party would never get away with letting the SNP and an independent Scotland use our currency and borrow against it, which, as we know, is what they would do. Under current agreement, borrowing powers are restricted. Good, because obviously the SNP will borrow us into more debt than even the Labour Party could. Finance Secretary Kate Forbes hit back at Mr. Fraser's claims and said independence will give the country the power it needs to grow their economy. She said this is increasingly desperate stuff from the Tories coming after a decade of austerity, and in the week the UK national debt topped $2 trillion for the first time. Yeah, and part of the reason it topped $2 trillion for the first time is because we have wankers like the SNP wasting our money, along with, of course, the Conservatives in London doing a piss-poor job of everything. Independence will give Scotland the powers we need to grow our economy and invest in our people and public services to create a fairer and wealthier country. Well, considering you're being raked over the coals here for wasting £62 billion of someone else's money, I would suspect that that is a complete and utter load of bollocks, and you know it. Well, I'm sure none of you are surprised that the SNP have been wanking our money down the toilet, but the article headline here is kind of wrong in SNP shame. I don't think they'll ever be ashamed of this. I think they're very proud of wasting the people of the UK's money every single day. Like all socialist spunk trumpets, they are great at spending other people's money, but not great at making it themselves. Old Fish Lips here is no exception.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors, slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires, and that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going, and we are glad to be going. We're off.